All right, it's mock draft Sunday. With August here and preseason coming up, it's time to knock out another mock draft. For this session, we randomized our spots in a 12 team half point PPR. I personally ended up at the number 1 spot, while John is ending up at the number 10 spot today. So, heads up, during the entirety of the draft, we are pretty much just going to go with the best player available format because neither one of us tend to really lean towards any specific strategies like zero RB or just going running back, running back, running back, or even trying to take a quarterback early. It all just depends on how the board falls to us. If we naturally end up doing that based off of best player available, then so be it. And just heads up again for all of our podcast listeners out there, you can see the live draft itself just by going to YouTube and looking up the fantasy football shrinks. And with all that said, let's go ahead and kick things off. All right, so with me at the number 1 pick, I'm pretty much going to adhere to my rankings as normal. Probably lean towards Ezekiel Elliott. He's still my number 1 back and thus my number 1 player in fantasy. I'm a big advocate of at least running away with one running back in your top 2 picks since it's a premium at the position. This year, Zeke, without any wide receiver help from Dez or Jason Witten with his retirement, and even with the current receivers they have in camp already banged up, I just see a ridiculous workload happening for Zeke this year. So I'm all aboard on the Ezekiel Elliott train. Just going to kick things off with him. After Zeke went, we had Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson at 105, Saquon Barkley, Antonio Brown finally came off the board, Kareem Hunt, and Melvin Gordon at 109, right before John's pick. All right, so what you got going on here, John?
Yeah, so now I'm going to take a look at my board. For my overall personal draft rankings, I think if I went to follow that, I would be going with Odell Beckham. When we look at the running backs, I think my top back to choose from would probably be Leonard Fournette. It is smart to, get your running backs early these days, but where I'm at in this draft pick right now, I should get another quality back on the turn on the comeback. So I'm going to go with Odell Beckham.
All right, cool. After Odell Beckham went, we had Julio Jones, Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Hopkins, and then Leonard Fournette. So right back on your pick again, John.
Oh man, that really sucks because I was hoping for either Dalvin Cook or Leonard Fournette, first round draft values in my book. So then I will look at my board again. My next running back. Let's see.
And that's where it's always fun to play like that ADP game where you're, especially like in your spot, not so much with mine. It's always trying to see who can come back towards you. So it's always fun to see if you can gamble on that and have it work out in your favor. Sometimes it won't, sometimes it will.
Yep. And seeing that I did pick Odell, I do want to grab a running back. And I do like Devontae Freeman, Jordan Howard, McCaffrey, Jerick McKinnon, Mixon. Those are all guys that I do want. But, and like I said, I usually don't do any sort of strategy, zero RB or anything like that. But with Michael Thomas here on the board, I think he's going to be a receiver depth late. But, if things go like where my draft is too wide receiver heavy, that's when you go in your league, start making trades, etc. So right now, with what I have on the board, I think I'm going to go with Michael Thomas.
All right, there you go. I think that's a good example of just still taking the best player available. It wasn't his idea to come into the draft going too wide receiver heavy, but still, just got to take what the board gives you. And after Michael Thomas with John, we had Keenan Allen at the 204, A.J. Green, Devontae Freeman, Devontae Adams, Jerick McKinnon, Joe Mixon. Yeah, that dude's starting to climb up into the second round these days, I'm starting to notice now. Jordan Howard, Christian McCaffrey, and then back to my pick. Now, for me, I'm in, this is always going to be a fun, interesting situation. So, I know Zeke gives me, like, the ultimate, like, in my opinion, the ultimate safety. And like I said, my first 2 picks, I prefer to go the safer route with things. And with the turn, sometimes you're just going to end up reaching sometimes for a couple players. Me, I know it's outside of conventional wisdom for a lot of people. I am still a fan of LaShawn McCoy. I know with all the legal allegations going on, he's falling down some boards. As of right now, I'm still assuming that nothing's going to happen. The Bills have gone on record pretty much saying they're not concerned with anything. And even in some instances, like just looking at Jameis Winston, if something does happen to him where suspension comes up, either a ridiculous amount of evidence would have to come up in a short amount of time, or it's not something that happens till next year. With that said, even on a bad team, because yes, the Bills should be a bad team. I'm not a fan of their offense this year. Shady's just a pure volume play. I'm not taking him in the first round like we have done in the past years, expecting him to give me RB1 type of value. At the bottom of the second round, I'm thinking he still has the ability to give me RB1 value just off of pure upside, but it's just as the volume plays. To give me a nice safe pick volume play. No one's going to challenge him for touches. He can end up probably leading the team in catches for all we know. And we've seen other backs in the past couple years be on bad teams and still finish as an RB1. Jordan Howard has finished as an RB1 the last 2 years, being on a terrible Bears team. And we even saw Carlos Hyde with the Browns going 0-16 last year, still end up being the RB9 in like any kind of like point per reception format. So I'm still going to take Shady here until like anything changes. And then right around with the flip on that pick, it was funny. I know I mentioned earlier not wanting to go heavy on the running back situations, but man, as the year goes along, and as more training camp stories come out, and we're about to see preseason coming up, I'm really starting to get on Darius, guys. I think he has a lot of upside because the Redskins' offensive line was just terrible last year, so I feel like that's why a lot of people aren't really high on their running game so far. And even the year before, they had a ridiculous amount of like red zone carries for backs between, what was it back then, Mac Jones? Yeah. Outside of Darius Guys, though, the only other person I can see is, I like the idea of Mike Evans. I'm still a big Mike Evans supporter, but Ryan Fitzpatrick still worries me a little bit. Not from the fact that I don't think they're going to do well. I think Mike Evans is going to do solid. Fitz did show last year, even when the times he came in off the bench, he still gives a high target value to Mike Evans. So he still has the upside to produce. But the person I probably like more rising in my rankings is when Andrew Luck is healthy, T.Y. Hilton is still, to me, going to be a wide receiver one. The last time they played together in 2016, he had 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns off 91 catches. The Colts literally still have no other offensive weapons. The running back situation is a mess. They think they drafted like a wide receiver like later in the draft. That's not really going to add much to the team. It's really just T.Y. or bust right now for the offense. Andrew Luck looks like he's going to come in healthy. He's even going to play like at least a quarter in the first preseason game. So I'm estimating Luck's going to come back strong. So I'm going to take T.Y. Hilton here. All right, after my pick with T.Y., then you have Mike Evans come off. Gronk at the 303. Derrick Henry. There's Darius Guice. Tyreek Hill. Aaron Rodgers coming off the board at 307. Jay Ajayi. Travis Kelce. And then John's pick.
Okay, now to my pick. I guess I'll just make a couple comments on some of the stuff we saw earlier. When you did make that mention of Joe Mixon, it does look like it's common for him to go in the late second, which is not something we were seeing earlier. I know I did a couple mock drafts and such with a third or fourth pick, which I thought was one of the best because you're getting one of those solid top 4 guys. On the comeback, you were getting options like Jordan Howard, McCaffrey, McKinnon. And then on your third round pick, you can even stack up and get one of those top backs. So your backs would be absolutely stacked. But it looks like as we get closer to when actual drafts start happening, some of the ADPs are going to rise, as they should. So far, nothing actually jumps out to me as crazy in this draft. I like that you did consider Guice on the comeback with your third pick. I think he's going to be a really good value for where he's going. So now, though, when we get to my pick here with Aaron Rodgers, Jay Ajayi, then Kelce coming off the board prior, it's now my pick. I do have Odell and Michael Thomas, so I do have my wide receivers. If Doug Baldwin wasn't injured, I would honestly just keep going wide receiver because I think Doug Baldwin is, with the loss of Jimmy Graham there and with how bad the line is and just how, Seattle might be back in games and the chemistry that he has with Doug Baldwin once the play breaks down, I'd be really high on him. But at this point in time, with the, if we start going into our drafts and he still hasn't played, he's probably going to be more of a 4th, 5th round value for me. So without having running back, I'll take a look at the running backs on the board. I see Alex Collins, Kenyon Drake, Lamar Miller, Rashad Penny are some of the top guys that they have recommended. That's the thing that does happen once you do wait to go running back. None of these are super stud running backs that you're really happy about. And, maybe you might want to go and grab a top end wide receiver. and just stack out there and take some of those shots in the dark as we go later. I personally do like Alex Collins did show that he can run the ball pretty well last year. I'm not too worried with Kenneth Dixon with the injuries already popping up. He missed a year, so he's gonna be given the load. The Ravens offense has gotten better, so I think he is a safe bet to get a chunk of carries. And with how my strategy is going, I'm going to go with Alex Collins.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been a fan of the Alex Collins pick, especially nowadays. I was a little bit higher on Kenyon Drake, but now, especially with coming out with the whole Frank Gore is already a co-starter. I don't even know how you do a co-starter at running back in that kind of situation, but okay. So yeah, I'm falling down on Kenyon Drake. I like the Alex Collins pick a lot, so big fan there. I think after you picked Alex Collins, then we had Stephon Diggs. There's Doug Baldwin. Yeah, it is definitely interesting seeing how his ADP is slowly slipping with that injury. Adam Thielen at the 401. That's probably the latest I've seen Thielen in a little while. And then Amari Cooper coming up right before your pick, John.
Yep. So back to my pick again. I would make a note of earlier if I wasn't going to go Alex Collins and try to take some more shots in the dark at running back later, Stephon Diggs probably would have been my pick there. And I've already talked about Doug Baldwin. I think Adam Thielen's not going to have as great as a year as last year, and he's just a little bit riskier with the new offense there and the new quarterback. Amari Cooper, that's a decent pick because he does have that high upside to bounce back as a wide receiver one, so I like that too. So now when it comes to my pick here on the turn, someone I'd be looking at, it sucks at this point in time with the news of Josh Gordon. You can't really feel confident in drafting him, or else, if we knew that he was going to be out there, there's no, bad signs, then I would say, heck yeah, give me Josh Gordon. He can be my flex player. So right now, since it says half-point PPR, I do have to consider Larry Fitzgerald, just because we've seen how solid he's been in the last couple of years, and now he's going to have a better quarterback than he's used to. So he's in consideration there to come in as my flex. And in a half-point PPR format, I do think that's valuable here in the early fourth. So we do know that I am weak on running back at the moment. I'm not fully buying into Kenyon Drake right now. I think they're listed as like co-starters with Gore right now. Gore just doesn't go away. The Dolphins might be a little bit better than people are thinking. They do have some easier games with their division and schedule, but he's not really someone that I think is worth an early fourth round ADP. Lamar Miller is someone that I was hating on a lot as we started the offseason process, but we saw how successful he was with Deshaun Jackson. Sorry, not Deshaun Jackson, Deshaun Watson.
I was man, Deshaun Jackson's getting around, isn't he?
Yeah, so we saw how effective he was with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is back and healthy. That should take off some of the pressure. That mobile quarterback will, open things up for Lamar. So, they do have a bad offensive line. That is something to consider, but he is something solid. And me here where I'm, lacking running back depth, that may be an option there. Penny is someone I'm not touching at this ADP, just based on the offensive line and all the stuff we're hearing about Chris Carson. Mark Ingram is someone I probably won't touch at all in my drafts. When you're going to miss the first 4 games, that doesn't bring much value to me, and you're wasting a bench spot. So it'd have to be many rounds later for me to even think about him. I was really high on Sony Michel. Now with the whole injury and bone-on-bone stuff, we'll have to wait and see how much his ADP drops, and maybe he'll something I'm considering later. But where we are right now, I think I'll go ahead and I'll do the safe thing, and I'll draft Lamar Miller.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. Lamar Miller is like the safe thing that no one wants to admit doing. This is funny. It's every time I go back and look at his numbers, I feel like they're always better than I thought they were before, especially when Deshaun Watson's in there. The dude's literally, I think he had a baseline of getting you around 8 to 9 points each week, with the upside of being able to get you 20 points when he scores a touchdown. The main thing is is Foreman going to be an issue? I know right now, coming off an Achilles injury, he's young, but still, Achilles injury, those are the types of things that wrecks careers. If I had to bet money, I could see him just either starting off on the PUP, so that means 6 weeks of uncontested Lamar Miller, or even if he's not on the PUP, he's not going to be a factor in the first 3-4 weeks. Later on in the season, I can see Foreman coming up, but until then, you can make trades, pick up people in free agency, and just go from there. Other picks I know that I like to highlight the 4th round, because right after you talked about it, there goes Fitz. Demarius, I'm still really high on Demarius this year. I feel like he's pretty much going to have an Adam Thielen year where he can easily get 90 catches, 1,200 yards. Still not just getting a ton of touchdowns, maybe 5 or 6, but that's the only production you need in like a point per reception league in order to end up being a wide receiver one, more so towards the back end. After Demarius went, then you had Josh Gordon still coming off the board, so his ADP is still around the 4th. We'll see how that changes over time. Then we have Brandon Cooks, Mark Ingram, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deshaun Watson, and then Zach Ertz at 411. So now it's my pick. So to recap, I already had Zeke, Shady McCoy, and T.Y. Hilton. So this is where I'm really just playing the board at this point in time. Like looking at the wide receiver spot, like Allen Robinson, well, I really haven't heard anything in camp. I feel he hasn't really practiced with his team yet, which is odd considering like the comparisons to Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz who are out there, and they tore their ACLs at a much later point in the season than Allen Robinson. Alshon Jeffrey is also dealing with an off-season shoulder surgery, so I don't even know if he's going to be out there week 1. So not really a huge fan of him. Looking at the running backs in there, we have Kenyon Drake. Yes, it still worries me with the whole Frank Gore. Rashad Penny, I hate Seattle's offensive line. I really just do not trust in it. I don't want to touch it. Sony Michel, same kind of things messing with me. Ronald Jones, Tampa Bay's offense just kind of scares me as a whole right now. So I kind of don't want anything to do with it. So now I find myself in that situation where I'm not a fan of any of these kind of players around here right now. But I do feel like it's going to make me reach a little bit more. Because that's the kind of situation you're in at when you're at the turn pick. You don't have the luxury of going purely off of ADP. It's all more so about your team construction. And right now, the team I have is like Zeke's always going to give me like solid production with high upside. As long as Andrew Luck's coming back, I feel like T.Y. is going to give me high production with the ability to have those 20-point weeks. Shady I'm looking more so for like a floor volume play. If he gets me like 50 yards rushing, like 30 yards receiving with a couple catches, and that's giving me like 10 points each week. I'm perfectly okay with that. So I think I'm still going to go more so the Shady route. And even though normally I would not take it, I'm going to reach a little bit and take Jarvis Landry here. I know in camp he's been really connecting with Tyrod Taylor so far, and I can easily see him getting another year where he's getting 100 catches, 900 to 1,000 yards, and a couple touchdowns to kick it off. So in any kind of like PPR leagues, he's always going to give me a nice safe floor. So then following up the pick right after that, I'm kind of at this point, wanted some more explosion on my team. I'm still not a fan of a lot of these wide receivers here. Marvin Jones would be the next person I would consider because I know I probably am not going to have a chance to get him in the 6th round. I kind of want to start looking at to see if I'm in the 5th to see what kind of elite quarterbacks are around. If Deshaun Watson was still here, I'd probably consider him at this pick. Tom Brady, he still finished the year a little bit rough for me, so I'm not a real big fan of that. Russell Wilson, he seems like he's going into a similar situation as last year, so it looks like the whole team's going to be back on his shoulders. But the Doug Baldwin injury does concern me, so I don't know if Russell Wilson's going to get a slow start out the gate. And Carson Wentz still, it's one of those things I'm probably not going to know until draft day. And if I really feel comfortable trying to take Carson Wentz, and I have to ignore my Eagles fandom right there. So this is one of those fun situations where I'm looking at the board, still don't like anything. I still probably want to stomach what's going to be the best overall option available for me. At this point, I'm probably going to go Marvin Jones here. Did not plan to go 3 straight wide receivers right off the start my draft, but Marvin Jones still has like high-end upside to put up big points with him being a red zone threat. So I'm going to go ahead and take Marvin Jones to finish out my wide receiving core. All right, then after the Marvin Jones pick, Kenyon Drake finally came off the board. Allen Robinson at 503, Sony Michel, Rashad Penny, Ronald Jones, Jimmy Graham at 507. Chris Hogan, that dude's ADP has been skyrocketing. I remember like a month ago and he was still like an 8th, 9th round pick. Now he's already in the 5th. That's crazy. Then Tom Brady at 509. Then we have John Spot.
Okay, yeah. Based on one of the picks you made, that Jarvis Landry, I know there's a lot of people hating on him now, saying, this is not that same offense he was in the Dolphins, where he's going to be targeted every play. Like you said, based on the chemistry we've seen how he's had with with Tyrod and the Browns quarterbacks, Jarvis is pretty talented, and he is going to get a shot more to play on the outside. So I think that's right around where he should be going. So I do like that pick. All right. So, yeah, we saw how that round played out. I would make a note of, I think mid-fifth is a bit too high for Jimmy Graham. Yeah, he will get some touchdown looks, but I think he's someone that you shouldn't be going after at his ADP.
No, I agree.
All right. Yeah. So, going on to my pick now, I have 2 wide receivers, Odell Michael Thomas, and then 2 backs, Alex Collins, and then my safer back in Lamar Miller. So I am kind of weak on back, so maybe you think this would be the time to start reaching. Unfortunately, with these guys on the board, I know there is a lot more hype about Royce Freeman. I'll have to do a little more digging in on him. Based on the current situation, though, there's nothing that screams that he's like a super safe option to be taking as early as the 5th round. So that's not someone I'm looking at. I was a lot higher on Marshawn Lynch coming in. With all the talks I'm hearing about and things I'm hearing from Doug Martin, I am going to have to see a little bit of preseason and adjust there. I know there's also a lot of hype for Kerryon Johnson, but none of these backs in this range for the next, 5, 6, 7, 8 players recommended here on this sleeper bot draft don't seem that intriguing to me. So I'll probably continue here and I'll turn to the wide receiver pick position to fill out my flex. I'm not really a guy that ever looks to draft quarterbacks, tight ends, anything like that earlier. So I'll go look at the board. I was earlier also higher on Alshon Jeffrey, but with the injury news that we heard from the surgery, this is just not a really good start to the season for him. So he's someone I'll skip over. So some of the next recommended players they have here is Golden Tate, Corey Davis, Will Fuller, Sammy Watkins, Michael Crabtree. I do think once you start getting to the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, there are a lot of receivers that will be valuable, which just makes 2 and 2 together. You get some of those solid backs early on, and then you can start going wide receivers. Here, I'm a big fan of Golden Tate because it seems pretty safe. He always has, 80, 90 catches. He doesn't really get into the end zone, but he is a steady target for Stafford, and in half-point PPR leagues, I think he's pretty valuable. So if I'm going on the safer end, I'll go with Golden Tate. I also am a bit higher on Corey Davis and Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is pretty talented. He should get targeted a lot more, especially in the red zone with the Chiefs. And I think this could be a breakout year for Corey Davis. But I'm going to play it a little bit safer here, and I'm going to go with Golden Tate.
All right. So after you got the Golden Tate pick, then we had Alshon Jeffrey, Royce Freeman, Russell Wilson, and then Marshawn Lynch coming off for you. It's one of those things right there. All right. Then what you got going on next, John?
All right. So now we're in the 6th round. I do know that my running backs and my flex is sorted out, but that doesn't mean I'm going to jump over to tight end and look at guys like Greg Olsen, who I'm a little, there's more targets there. I'm not sure how he's going to pan out. I am pretty high on Evan Ingram, but 6th round, early 6th, still a bit early for me to go tight end. If I had to go tight end this early, I don't think this is the worst spot for Ingram, especially all the things we've been hearing from camp. I'm going to follow this up with another wide receiver. Since I just went with the safe option here with Golden Tate. When it comes to PPR, I think someone like Emmanuel Sanders, who's a few down on the recommended, he'll be another safe target with Case Keenum there. He's always like a high catch guy. He'll be involved in the offense. I think he's pretty safe. Except for now, after those picks, I'm going to go with someone with upside because we're at that point of the draft where your starters are filled out. You should be pretty confident in them. Start going for the upside. So I am going to go with Corey Davis.
All right. And John, I actually would like you to touch a little bit more on that because I know you mentioned it for a second where your starters already filled out. Because I know a lot of times for traditional drafters, their mindset would look at their team like, okay, hey, I got my Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas, my 2 running backs right after that, Golden Tate. My thing is full. Now they're going to start going the mindset of maybe going towards tight ends or quarterbacks. For you, what makes you still want to start filling up your bench earlier than some teams?
Yeah, and exactly. I know you'll go over the little recap of who went after me, but we see that there was a quarterback came off the board and 2 tight ends. So I know this 6th round is usually the round where a lot of leagues will start dipping into those positions. The thing for me is, the main tight ends that have that solid value that what you're getting, the Gronks, the Ertzes, the Kelseys, they're already gone and they're off the board. So, I don't really want to go this early with someone I'm not that confident in. And I'm one of those guys with now in this day and age, there's so many quarterbacks that are available that can compete, even if they're ranked 18th, 19th, 20th. It's a day and age where you can stream or you can find a matchup for someone who's going to do well for you for a couple weeks. So my thing is now, especially with how trading has become really popular in fantasy, and not only that, it is football. People are getting injured all the time. You might as well, say the season starts right off the bat, and Golden Tate goes down with an injury. I'm going to be really happy that I had Corey Davis there, that I can just slide into my slot and still feel pretty happy about it. So I think you want to keep going while everyone else starts targeting tight ends, maybe defense. It doesn't matter however people in your league draft. So you're going to start seeing value at the wide receiver running backs position slip. So these are the rounds where I keep trying to get that value that's slipping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. So that's why I wanted you just to touch on that for one moment. Because the biggest thing is the Raymond Fantasy, no matter how smart you are, whether you're an expert, whether you're just a normal fan, your first few picks, someone's going to bust out. Whether it's going to be kind of an injury because some unforeseen thing that no one sees coming. So it's always good to try to have strong bench players to kind of hold you when that something like that happens. So, all right, after John made the Corey Davis pick, then we had Michael Crabtree come off the board, Greg Olsen, Dion Lewis at 606, Drew Brees, Kerryon Johnson, Evan Ingram, Tyreek Cohen at 610, Will Fuller, and then my pick. All right, then just a recap of my team so far. Still looking at Ezekiel Elliott, LaShawn McCoy. Then I went wide receiver heavy with T.Y. Hilton, Jarvis Landry, and Marvin Jones. So then I'm in that spot where I can start thinking like John. And if I wanted to, it's all right, can start loading up some more talent. Like Sammy Watkins has a lot of upside just in case. Let's say that Marvin Jones doesn't work out this year and those fears about Kenny Golladay do turn out to be true and I see regression on him. So I can look at Sammy Watkins or Emmanuel Sanders at this spot in the draft. If I wanted to shore up my running backs because I only have two, then I can get a solid backup with maybe Tevin Coleman, Carlos Hyde still a starter. The Rex Burkhead hype keeps going up higher and higher now that Sony Michel's out and then there's less and less weapons around them. Still, the tight end market still seems pretty strong right now. I can get Kyle Rudolph or Delaney Walker. Maybe even Jordan Reed if I wanted to go and roll the dice on that. But for me, one of the people I'm really high on because I did not expect to take 3 wide receivers just going off the board, I'm still really high on Emmanuel Sanders. I want a piece of that Broncos offense because I feel like it's going to be a big improvement from last year with Case Keenum in play. And Emmanuel Sanders has even come out in recent interviews and talked about how bad his ankle was last year, that he was only playing on maybe 30% strength and how having the bad quarterbacks really affected him, or he didn't even know if he wanted to play football anymore. He's come back in camp. He's rejuvenated. I heard he's going to be working more so out of the slot and on the outside. So he's going to be moving all over the place. I can see Emmanuel Sanders possibly trying to take over for maybe even playing more of a Stephon Diggs role for Case Keenum. I know it's a different offense, but that's just maybe something he's more so used to. So I see a big emergence coming back for him. So I definitely want to have Emmanuel Sanders somewhere on my team. So I'm going to take Emmanuel Sanders there. And to follow up with that, I know I'm still missing on my quarterback and my tight end. The 7th round, and this is where part of it, my fanship wants to come into play. It's hey, it's 7th round. I can go ahead and take Carson Wentz here. But I'm still going to fight against that, despite how much the Eagles fan in me wants to go ahead and take Carson Wentz. And I may start looking back at tight end. I prefer to wait probably until a little bit later, but at the same token, I feel like there is going to be more wide receiver and running back depth later on in the rounds, where I would like to just start loading up on them and not have to worry about looking over my shoulder to get a quarterback or a tight end. So at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and actually go off the top of the board and go with Kyle Rudolph here in the 7th round. All right, after Kyle Rudolph wins, then, there goes Carson Wentz. Sorry, Carson. Then Sammy Watkins, Julian Edelman, Delaney Walker, Rex Burkhead at 706. I'm surprised his ADP is not higher based off the recent Sony Michel news, so we'll keep an eye on that for the next couple weeks. Carlos Hyde at 707, Kirk Cousins, Marlon Mack. His ADP is falling a little bit. He used to be a 5th, 6th round pick, now at 709. And now we have John's pick.
Yep. And as we said before, since my last pick, 4 tight ends went off the board, 3 quarterbacks. So it's a lot less running backs and wide receivers coming off. So a lot of guys that were, you normally think might be gone are probably still there. When it does come to the 7th round, if there is a quarterback that you like, I'm not opposed to it. Carson Wentz, depending on how he looks in preseason, as long as he looks fully healthy, I mean, that's probably not a horrible decision. Right now, honestly, in the 7th round, I'm not going to lie, I would take Andrew Luck. However, this mock is so early, and it's guaranteed that as people see Luck play and watch him in preseason, and they see that he's healthy and he is playing, people will remember that Luck is a top 5. I think right now in my overall rankings, I already have Luck at 3 overall, just because he seems like he's throwing again. He seems like he's healthy. If I see something bad, I'll adjust him otherwise. So if you are in this 6th, 7th area and Luck is on the board in your real drafts, I would go ahead and go Luck. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now here at the 7th round, the last tight end of the tight ends I would ever think about slightly reaching for would be the Evan Ingrams, Kyle Rudolphs, and even Delaney Walker. Those guys are off now. You have Jordan Reed with the injury issues, Trey Burton in a new offense with Trubisky, Kittle, Eifert, injury prone. You're kind of down to the bottom of the barrel. So this is probably the part where I'll just wait it out for tight end. And I will continue to wait on quarterbacks. So then I'll go take a look at the running backs and the wide receivers. So as I look at the draft board, I know my running backs are a bit weaker than my wide receivers, and this is actually the part of the draft where I do see some backs that I am willing to take a chance on. Those type of backs are backs with high upside that can end up getting a full role. Jamal Williams is one of those. He's going to get the first crack at it with the Aaron Jones suspension, and Ty Montgomery has showed that he can't be healthy, and maybe he'll even take over more of that Randall Cobb type role since we've seen he's been injured again. So I do think Jamal Williams is a good bet where he can take over that starter role in such a potent offense with Aaron Rodgers. So I'll let you know that he's probably going to be my pick. I do also like Isaiah Crowell with the injury to Elijah McGuire. Bilal Powell should be the change of pace, 3rd down back, but I still see Crowell staying in on some 3rd downs and being involved in the receiving game. So I think he is someone that can do well. The only issue is the Jets' offensive line is pretty bad. I think one of their best offensive linemen, Kelvin Beachum, is already banged up. So the offensive line could be pretty bad, which could limit his upside there. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draft Jamal Williams.
Okay. Yeah, I love the Jamal Williams pick. And that's one of those things where I am fascinated to see once preseason starts rolling around. Is Jamal Williams going to stay at being like a 6th, 7th round pick? Or is he going to start like rolling up an ADP? Because Aaron Jones not going to be an issue for the first 2 weeks at least. And then after that, I can see him coming into play. And I feel like at this point, if Jamal Williams gets the hot hand, he has a decent shot just to run away with the job with Aaron Jones coming in. But then again, it could still end up being like a huge RB by committee kind of thing where Jamal Williams could get 50%, Aaron Jones might get 30%, and then Ty Montgomery sprinkles in. And for the people out there that really are into trying to take a chance on Mark Ingram earlier, Jamal Williams may be one of those backs that you can get in a later part of the draft in order to help subside the suspension for Mark Ingram. Now, after the Jamal Williams pick, we had Randall Cobb go, Trey Burton at 7-12, Tevin Coleman at the top of the 8th round, Cam Newton, and then right back to John's pick.
Yep, and here in the 8th round, I also think it's fine where you can start looking at Cam Newton. I think, since he had an off year, people are a little down on him, but, Cam runs the ball. He's got some more weapons like DJ Moore. I think he's going to be pretty valuable, and you can see based on if I have, Luck as my 3rd overall and I'm starting to think about him in late 6th, early 7 or so, then Cam Newton is someone that I would look at in the 8th, but he did just go off the board. So I said I wasn't going to touch any tight ends, so I'm looking for a flex here, running back or wide receiver. We do still have Crowell there, and I do now have my 3 running backs. So Crowell might be a safe guy to add on to it. However, these are the next couple rounds where I see myself stacking up on a couple more wide receivers because there are some guys I like as I look down the draft board. I see Marquise Goodwin, Jamison Crowder, Robbie Anderson. I'm still deciding between Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, but I mean, just seeing the chemistry with Goff, and I know Brandon Cooks is there, but I still like Robert Woods. I was high on Devontae Parker coming into the offseason. I have heard he's been having a bad camp, so that's something for me to look into. However, usually it's Devontae Parker is having a crazy camp and then he disappoints. So I don't know. Maybe he'll flip that up on us this year.
That'd be hilarious.
I'm going to go ahead here and go with someone that I really like. Once Jimmy Garoppolo came in last year, Marquise Goodwin became a top target for him. Through training camp now, he's still a top target for him. We've seen how fast Marquise Goodwin is. So he's not just a straight line player too. He was a little bit involved on shorter routes last year. So I think he's going to be one of Jimmy's favorite weapons. Everyone thinks that Garoppolo has talent. So here now in the 8th round, I think Marquise Goodwin is a great safe pick with high upside.
Oh yeah, I love the Marquise Goodwin pick. He's pretty much always on pretty much every list for any draft board I have right around this spot for me to get a hold of him. I probably would have been interested in taking him in the 7th round with the turn pick because I knew I may not have gotten him in the 8th, but I already loaded up on wide receivers. So after you took Marquise Goodwin, then we had Devin Funchess, Pierre Garçon, C.J. Anderson, Isaiah Crowell, Jordy Nelson, Andrew Luck off the board, Aaron Jones, and then Cooper Kupp. That's why when I'm looking at the wide receiver market now, it's one of those things where you wish you would have I would have taken another running back early on because I could still get someone like Jamison Crowder or even Robbie Anderson to help fill out my roster and then throw in Emmanuel Sanders there. So that's some of those fun draft day regrets that you have to deal with. On the running back side, things are starting to thin out now. We're looking at the top options being like Chris Thompson, Nick Chubb, Chris Carson, Ty Montgomery, all people that definitely have upside depending on the situation, but that's when you're looking at you need really specific things to happen in order for these to work out. But then at the same bet, I am still really weak at running back. If there's some kind of injury that happens to Zeke or Shady, which could always happen, then I'm in a bad spot. So that's when you have to start looking at one of these other running backs that may be able to help you fill the void. Or at that spot, I can start looking at the quarterback market. Jimmy Garoppolo could have a good year. Matthew Stafford has always been one of the most consistent quarterbacks throughout fantasy recently. But for me, since I know I'm going to get back-to-back picks, I know first and foremost, I'm going to focus on the running back position to see exactly what I can get down here. And that's why I'm still going down the board because a lot of the other backs that we currently have available, Chris Thompson, Nick Chubb, Chris Carson, Ty Montgomery, these are all guys that I don't feel like could give me like sustained fantasy success. They may be little spurts here and there. I may want someone on my team that I know can give me consistent production week in and week out. And I'm actually going to reach a little bit on here at the 8th round because I need some kind of back. I may look at Duke Johnson here because I know the Browns just decided to pay him a decent amount of money. And even last year, he still finished out still within the top 25 backs just because of his PPR ability. And if he still has a solid role within that offense, especially with the departure, because I know we just got an update that Corey Coleman got traded, so that's even more targets that may just free up for the Browns offense. So I can see Duke Johnson coming into play. That's a possibility. If I wanted to go that same route, Nick Chubb could be something. So I think that's the route I probably am going to go, though. Nick Chubb has been someone that I kind of like. I've heard reports like kind of this is saying that he could win the starting job. It's one of those things where I do understand that they went ahead and paid Carlos Hyde to come in there. But at this kind of mindset, I'm thinking long term. Nick Chubb may not be someone I'm going to be able to use right off the back, but maybe a few weeks in, then I start seeing more of a split carry and kind of see how that goes. So I'll go Nick Chubb to help fill out my backfield a little bit more. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and fill out my quarterback situation just so I don't have to worry about it down the line. And for me, the two names that stick out here are either Matthew Stafford or Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's definitely has shown in the past that when it comes to him getting a new offensive coordinator, it's usually the second year that he turns it around and has a bigger season. So I really like the Falcons offense to do a bounce back. And Matthew Stafford, the big thing with him is he just never had a running game. Now that they've invested more into the running game, it gave him some more options on the offensive line. The Lions offense could also see a bounce back. But I'm probably going to lean towards Stafford. His lows are still in a higher level than Matt Ryan's, just in case the Falcons do dip off a little bit. So I'm going to take Stafford because I still trust his weapons over Garoppolo. And if just in case if Marvin Jones does work out for me, then I even get double touchdown potential. All right, so after the Matt Stafford pick, then we're getting Robbie Anderson, Chris Carson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Allen Hurns, Jordan Reed, Robert Woods, Jamison Crowder. The first defense went off at 909, and then we have John's pick.
Okay, so now we're here at my pick. When you look at it, most of the people here have kind of filled out their quarterback spot. So to me, there's no reason to get a quarterback until as late as possible. Like I said, there's a bunch of guys where I continuously see myself streaming. And if you look at the rankings right now or for ADPs, there's undrafted guys that, everyone's super high on Odell Beckham. People are high on Evan Ingram. People are high on Saquon Barkley. People are even a little high on Sterling Shepard. Someone's got to give him the ball. And that's Eli. So he's someone that when he has a favorable matchup, there's a game going into what looks to be a shootout. He's someone I'm picking up off the wire and playing right away. I think I saw they play the Jaguars week 1. So I can even see maybe someone drafts him as like a backup or something. He could be dropped. He'll hit the wire. Jameis Winston, once he comes back, Alex Smith. There's guys that I can see myself streaming. So now quarterbacks are out of the question. So right now I have the 4 wide receiver, how many do I have? I have Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas, Golden Tate, Corey Davis, and Marquise Goodwin. So I do have 5 receivers now, and then Alex Collins, Lamar Miller, and Jamal Williams, and 3 backs. So I will take a glance at the backs to see if there's anyone I really like there to get a little more depth. Chris Thompson, I know he said he's not 100% yet. I don't want to double dip on the Packers backfield. Duke Johnson has always been solid in half point or PPR leagues last year, and a lot of my drafts, a lot of my teams that were half point, I went heavy on wide receiver early, and I filled out Duke as my RB2, and he was very solid, someone I liked having. However, the Browns the backfield is shaking up a little bit when they added Hyde and Nick Chubb. So I don't know how much I can cut in, so that's not someone I'll probably go here. And then it kind of goes down the list with some guys I'm not too happy with. We look at wide receivers. We're in the 9th round. Devontae Parker is someone I did like, but based on what I'm hearing at the moment and the number of wide receivers I have, he's probably not somewhere I'll go. And I don't really see anyone in the immediate future as someone I think of as a must-have. So I will, it is a bit early, still the 9th round, but I do see that George Kittle is the next tight end. And if I miss him in drafts, so if there was someone on the board where I'm like, oh, he's still here, I would easily take him and take a chance on someone like, Njoku or Austin Seferian-Jenkins, or I'm hearing a lot of stuff about Eric Ebron. They have that Eagles kind of offense now where tight ends are going to be used. Both tight ends are going to be used. But I will go right now with George Kittle.
All right. Yeah, that was one of those things. I'm glad that you touched on it too. This is why we do mock drafts. It's really interesting seeing how thin the running back market seems to get, especially as compared to the wide receiver market. Even for me, it's been the first time I had to do a mock draft at the 101 position. So definitely regretting a couple picks earlier. If I knew the running back market was going to be this thin at this point in time. But that's exactly why we do this, to get a good feel of exactly how much the ADPs are going to move around and the best way to construct our teams going forward. All right, so then right after you made that George Kittle pick, then we had Ty Montgomery come off the board. Los Angeles Rams defense, so another defense there. Kelvin Benjamin starting the 10th round, which is crazy. According to Kelvin Benjamin, now that he has a new quarterback, he should be the greatest quarterback. He should be the greatest wide receiver on the planet, because Cam Newton was just that inaccurate. According to Kelvin Benjamin, that is. And then Devontae Parker comes off, and then back to you, John.
Yep, and now we're here in the 10th round. These type of things are going to change a lot in the next couple of weeks before people draft, so I'll try not to take as much time and get through these a little bit quicker. When I look at the receivers, there are some guys I like. Aguilar is solid. As we get closer, if DJ Moore continues to kill it in preseason and have a real connection with Cam, he might very well be my pick here, or even around earlier in the 9th. I do like Cameron Meredith a lot. I think I saw they cut Brandon Coleman. Mm-hmm. He was someone that everyone was high on with the Bears before he got injured. Now he has Drew Brees throwing him the ball. So I do like Cam Meredith. Mike Williams is also someone that could become a factor this year. So I do like that there. Since there are so many wide receivers as we go down the list, we have who else? If you're big on Josh Doxson, he's going to be a red zone threat. Anthony Miller, who's been going off in camp. Geronimo Allison, who could take over that second wide receiver role for the Packers. Lockett. There's a lot of receivers here that I'm really interested in. So as the running back thins out, I'm going to go ahead and go with Doug Martin, just because we hear how John Gruden loves him. He brought him in there. He was someone I kind of slept on, but like something he did say, this is one of the best offensive lines he's worked with, and I know the Bucs usually don't have that great of lines. So if something does happen with Lynch, or there's some disagreement with Gruden or anything, or Doug Martin comes out and has some big runs, he could actually turn into someone who could become a lead back. So here in the 10th round, I'm going to go Doug Martin.
All right. Yeah, I feel like the Doug Martin situation is going to be interesting because I still am not 100% sure how that Marshawn Lynch thing may turn out, and Doug Martin could be a really good value for the draft price they're getting him at. All right, let's see. Other things that are going on after Doug Martin got picked. We had Corey Clement, Chris Thompson, a little bit of a quarterback run with Phillip Rivers at 10.06, Matt Ryan 10.07, Ben Roethlisberger 10.8. Then we had the Chargers defense, the Vikings defense, and then Calvin Ridley off the board. Now it's right back to my pick. It's one of those things I would still, at this point in time, looking at the board, I would still feel better if I had some more running back depth, just to ease my conscience. It's one of those things where, at this point in time, I really don't feel like ADPs really matter as much when you start getting towards the 10th round beyond, because there's still so many players available. You just take the people who you really like. Like right now, I'm not really a fan of LeGarrette Blount. I don't want any part of that Colts backfield until preseason kind of figures itself out. So I know from my stance, running back wise, I'm kind of leaning towards going a little bit down and keeping an eye on Frank Gore, especially with the news that just came out with him possibly being co-stars with Kenyon Drake. Frank Gore's nickname is literally the inconvenient truth for a reason. That dude is just literally inconvenient for everyone he plays. And while it's normally for defenses, fantasy owners just keep wanting to bury Frank Gore, and he just keeps pumping out 1,000-yard seasons. Well, I'm not saying that's going to happen again here. I could see a world where he's going to get a decent amount of touches. So he's definitely on my radar later in the drafts. If I wanted to fill out the wide receiver role, definitely with John was I love Sterling Shepard a lot. And Nelson Aguilar, especially coming out with the whole Alshon Jeffrey injury. I think Nelson Aguilar is going to be a really sneaky start just to start off the season. So I think with that in mind, I'm actually going to take Nelson Aguilar just to give me a little bit more depth at the wide receiver position with some upside. And then that's when I'm going to go back in the 11th round to start things off down to Frank Gore to give me a little bit more comfort at my running back spots now. All right, after I took Frank Gore, then we had DJ Moore off the board. Then there's Duke Johnson, Sterling Shepard at 11.04, Patrick Mahomes, Tyler Eifert, LeGarrette Blount, Jared Goff, and then Cameron Meredith at 11.09. Then John's pick.
Yeah, and as I take a look, I already see there's two teams who picked two quarterbacks, a team with two tight ends, and all of that's something I would never do, and I find it crazy. I always find out in these leagues you have with your friends and family and stuff, that always tends to happen, which, like I always said, pushes down value, and you just got to look out for it. So that's why I thought I got Kittle a little higher than I wanted to, but at least I secured that I got a tight end that I like. Okay, so here there's 4 rounds remaining. One of those is going to have to be a kicker and a defense and a quarterback. I'm not worried any of those guys getting picked. So now it's just best available. So when I look at the flexes, I said there's not really any running backs there that I'm super high on. I think has a massive ceiling at the moment. And a lot of those wide receivers that I was talking about that I liked are still on the board. So that's good. So the options are now down to Mike Williams. We have Josh Doxson, Anthony Miller, Tyler Lockett, Paul Richardson. These are all guys that I think have some upside. I am going to go ahead and maybe if I see some more chemistry with Rivers and Mike Williams, they're with just Keenan Allen there, he could become a big player. I think what I will do is I'll go ahead and I am going to go with Tyler Lockett just because now not only is he a starter now, but we have Doug Baldwin banged up. Tyler Lockett came out and said that he wasn't healthy last season, and he has been effective in the past. So with my last quarterback, kicker, defense pick, I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett.
All right, there we go. And then we have the Broncos defense coming off right after that. Mike Williams, Nyheim Hines, and Donta Foreman. And right back to you, John.
Okay, so now I need to go with a quarterback, kicker, or defense. I look at the quarterbacks. Honestly, in real life situation, it'd probably just be which quarterback has the best week one matchup. And at this point in time, I'm not actually sure. So I'll just go ahead and go with a quarterback that I like. I think Alex Smith is someone who's a little undervalued going into the season. And just for the fact that I know that Eli does play the Jaguars week one, I'll go ahead and I will select Alex Smith here.
Yeah, I agree. I think Alex Smith is definitely being really underrated. I think what people keep forgetting is that Jay Gruden, while the Redskins may not have the best winning record, Jay Gruden still has shown that he is a good offensive-minded coach that can get the best out of his quarterbacks. There's been multiple years where like a lot of his quarterbacks ended up being in the top 5 in fantasy. One of those quarterbacks is Andy Dalton. So yeah, see that great year that Andy Dalton had, that was under Jay Gruden. And they really wanted Alex Smith. I feel like that's them looking at the film, understanding Alex Smith would do well in this offense, and he still has the mobility to take advantage of a lot of extra plays, which a lot of people just seem to forget about. He has tight end options here because as long as Jordan Reed stays healthy for like 5 seconds, he can be productive. And even when he inevitably goes down, he already has chemistry with Vernon Davis over the years, and he does has pretty decent wide receiver options that a lot of people are sleeping on. So I think Alex Smith is a really solid pick to get later in the draft. Well, after Alex Smith, then we had Devontae Booker, the Philadelphia Eagles D, Kenny Stills, Houston defense, Martavis Bryant, David Njoku, Derek Carr, and Jack Doyle. Now for me, I need to get my kicker and defensive spot filled. I know this is just one of those things that me and John have always differed on for years. Fantasy, you're going to get points regardless either way. It's all about you scoring more points than the other person at the end of the day. And I understand even in the community, the kicker is something that is still mocked. But in the day, there are weeks. I remember we've had, even in our like little friend and home leagues, there have been kickers that won people fantasy games. So I'm always a big advocate of getting a solid kicker. Even if you, especially when you're only having like last 3 rounds remaining, I'm taking dart shots at other people. I'd rather have a kicker I know I'm going to have all the way throughout the season that can maybe get me double-digit points and help me secure some decent fantasy victories. Typically, though, the kicker trend never is the top kicker from last year. It's going to be the first one, so I'm not one to try to get Greg Zuerlein. Gostkowski is always solid. Me, I've always been a big fan of Justin Tucker. I'm pretty much getting him in like every single draft just because Joe Flacco's always been such a terrible quarterback and does not have the best red zone efficiency that they do tend to kick a lot of field goals. With better offensive weapons, I see that red zone efficiency going up. But still, I feel like that Justin Tucker with his range is still ridiculous, especially in those leagues that you get 5 points for like 60-yard field goals. So I'll go ahead and start the kicker thing and take Justin Tucker here first. So I feel safe about that. Then on the defensive side, because I know since I see everyone else is getting defense with that flip turn, I don't know how many others are not going to be on the board. So I start taking a look at them. Typically, like how John mentioned with his quarterbacks, I'm going to probably take the defense that has the best week 1 matchup. And right now, none of these really really appeal to me for like long-term success. So I'm probably going to pass on that and go back to looking to see what other offensive options are there to solidify my team. Probably the 2 names that pop out of my mind at the running back spot, Kenneth Dixon here. I know we all love Alex Collins, but there is still a reality out there that the Ravens did not get another running back through free agency or the draft. It's a possibility that not only do they love Alex Collins, but Kenneth Dixon could be someone that now that he's going to get all his injury stuff taken care of and all the off-field stuff taken care of, where he could look into getting a decent workload. Giovanni Bernard, as we saw last year, does have an existence in the Bengals offense. He just tends to not go away. So he can always give you a decent, solid performance. Pretty much if you need to have someone come in on a bench week. Wide receiver spot, though, I'm probably going to look towards Geronimo Allison here as that sneaky flyer. I know with Randall Cobb just getting another injury, Randall Cobb has shown that he's just that type is going to stay injury prone all throughout the season. So the Packers are going to be looking for another option throughout the field to emerge. Jimmy Graham, I think, primarily is going to be a red zone threat, so Devontae Adams can't do it at all. So I think Geronimo Allison is going to be a solid pick that could work out. All right, then after that pick, then we had the Baltimore Ravens defense come up. Then you're starting to see all the kickers come out in the third round. So Greg Zerline, Steven Goskowski, the Patriots defense at 1305. Then we have the Will Lutz, the Saints defense, Jake Elliott, and then Matt Bryant. Now we have John's pick would normally come up right here. But I know especially one of the things with the sleeper bot draft, which we didn't get to all the way, is it does have a tendency to go ahead and end the draft like a round early, just based off of timing wise. So just to finish out, at least on your spot, John, if you did have a pick here, who would you have taken?
Here, like I said, it's up to kicker or defense. That's something that I fully stream. So as we get closer and I actually start doing my drafts, I usually don't start really doing real drafts till about 2.5 weeks before the season starts. So then I'll probably look at whatever defense has an easy schedule to start the year. So to me right here, I don't really know. I do like the I mean, honestly, these defenses I'm looking at, nothing actually jumps out to me as being super awesome. So it's kind of just a dart throw. I don't care. Maybe I'll go with the kicker here, Harrison Butker. I'll draft him.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then after John's pick, then we had Gio Bernard, Mason Crosby, Marcus Lee, and Mariota. Apparently, Sleeper Bot likes to lie to us where they make you feel like all the teams are complete and now they're just waiting for me to end the draft and they just let you keep going. So congrats, John. You can keep picking more picks.
Awesome. So now it's the defense. I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead. The Chiefs defense should be a little better this year. Eric Berry is returning. I'll draft them, sure.
All right. And that could be a decent sleeper defense. I know with Eric Berry leaving, then their defense just plummeted, but that might be something that could come back around. Then you have the Latavius Murray pick at 1404, Josh Doxson, Matt Prater, Kenny Galladay, Dan Bailey, Rashard Matthews, Anthony Miller, and then Robbie Gould. So the last pick of the draft, now I gotta get my defense situation underway. Me, I'm kind of the same boat as John. I prefer to stream, so I know. So if I'm not getting the best matchup here, then I'm probably just going to go with something that could be solid. The Panthers defense has had its weeks where it can be good, and it also has weeks where it can be terrible. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Panthers defense in order to end off things on my side. Well, see, that's what I was talking about. It likes you, John. It doesn't let me do a pick. So normally I would take the Panthers defense if the draft will let me, but either way, I was the last pick, so that would conclude everything on that side. And I know.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
that's fine. I was wondering. I guess if you just wanted to maybe go through and just do a quick rundown of how your team came out and what your feelings are on that, and then I guess I'll talk about mine after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's one of those things where it's funny. I feel bad. It makes me feel bad for some people at the 101 spot. Where either it's gonna start off really well because you can have a lot of talent come to you in the first three picks. Like I was excited off the initial kickoff with getting Zeke. Me, I know I'm higher on LaShawn McCoy than a lot of other people. I'm just looking at it as a pure volume thing. I still think the Bills' offense is going to stink, but Shady is going to be the only offensive weapon there, so he is going to be productive. I've been looking at a lot of film from him from last year, and he has not looked like he has slowed down at all. Even if he is going to hit 30, I think he still has about another year or two before he falls off that cliff. Love the T.Y. Hilton pick to really kick things off, give me another explosive upside. Jarvis Landry with the floor. So it's funny, I did not notice that I was doing a high ceiling Zeke, then do a floor with high floor with Shady, high ceiling with Ty, high floor with Jarvis Landry. Then I go back to Marvin Jones where he could go anywhere. He could end up being busting out for me. He could end up with another wide receiver 1 finish. Personally, I think it's going to be more so of a wide receiver 2 finish. Like the rate he was scoring touchdowns at last year, I don't think it's sustainable. But hopefully he gets more involved on a yardage basis. He can actually pump out 1,000 yards, maybe 6-7 touchdowns this year. I'm more concerned that Emmanuel Sanders is probably going to be the one that takes over that slot. I'm glad I got him later in the draft because I just think he's going to have a lot of high upside. Kyle Rudolph to get the tight end spot because we saw how it was last year with a couple injuries. If you don't have a solid tight end to get you through, I do not want to rake through the waiver wires on that one. So I'm happy to have Kyle Rudolph there. So I think my starting lineup I was happy with. It was when I started getting in the later rounds because especially with this format where I was focusing on other things, I did not have a chance to really scout out the running back market. I am not happy at all with my bench right now for running back side, especially because all I need is one bad injury to happen to Shady because he has had the propensity to get banged up a little bit. He doesn't miss too many games, but still gets a little tweaked and he is getting older. So if one of my backs get hurt at this moment, then I'm definitely on a downside there. So looking forward, definitely want to invest earlier in some running backs, even on the bench side, because there are still better wide receivers. So that's definitely a mistake I feel like I made. Still love having Matthew Stafford. Pretty much on solid if you're still doing like a 6-point quarterback league for touchdowns. He can give you around low minimum 17 points, but then he has the upside to get you 30-point week so he can win you a game. Love Nelson Aguilar. I think he's going to, once again, like how he was last year, go on like little small stretches where he can really help give you some solid fantasy production, especially with Alshon out. Yeah, then Frank Gore, I think I love it as a solid sneaky pick. I'm always about having Justin Tucker as a solid kicker on my team. And Geronimo Allison, I like his upside as well. So the main thing I'm looking at here is I think I have a solid starting lineup, but with my bench the way it is, I'm hoping that one of these other wide receivers really show out so I can package them to try to fill up my running back depth just in case Shady does decide to fall off a cliff and I end up being wrong or an injury comes up.
Yeah, I definitely think you did a good balance there of high ceiling players and high floor players to kind of alternate with. So that kind of worked out for you. So when I look at my team, the way how it went, when I look at the roster, my quarterback, like I said, I usually stream ended up being Alex Smith. I'm not too worried about that. My running backs are Alex Collins, Lamar Miller. I know that's kind of why people have gone away from going wide receivers early because that kind of grosses them out. But in most leagues, if you're playing and, it's active, you can use trades. And for example, I guess I'll go into that here. So I have Alex Collins, Lamar Miller. Then my receivers are Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas. So two guys who I think are going to finish in the top 5, which is going to be a big help. I have George Kittle as my tight end. He should progress now in his second year. He seems to be building a little bit of a rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo and can maybe become that little red zone target for him. And then my flex is Golden Tate. And then I don't care about the kicker and defense. But what I really love about my team, which is what usually happens with the way I draft, is then my bench is Corey Davis, who has a massively high ceiling. Jamal Williams, which also has a high ceiling if he becomes a starter. Marquise Goodwin, who has a high ceiling. Doug Martin, he could end up being a bust, someone I drop after 2 weeks, or he could be someone who takes over and has 50% or more of the workload, and could be someone who I feel fine with plugging in on a bye week. And then Tyler Lockett, who has the upside. And for example, if I look in this sleeper mock, whoever has the 1-9 pick, they got Melvin Gordon in the first round, and then they end up going receivers and tight ends, and then got a quarterback. And it's not until round 7 that they got their second back. So their second back is Marlon Mack. And this guy went and got Tom Brady, which is like a top 3 quarterback. Kelsey, a top 3 tight end. Mm-hmm. He even went and got the Jaguars D in the 9th. And there's always that person in your drafts that wants to get the top, let me have the top tight end, top quarterback. And it's not a horrible strategy, but, they suffered when it came to running back. So, see someone like me where I have this depth and I'm going, hey, I'll pair Lamar Miller and Jamal Williams and then, throw in my flex, whoever, based on matchups or whoever had a big week who I think might not perform as well, whether that's between Tate or Corey Davis or Goodwin. And, I package up a bunch of guys to get, say Melvin Gordon after a few weeks, say this guy is struggling and, he needs running back help. And he realized that, Marlon Mack lost the job completely and he's really struggling. Those are the type of players that you can target. And then, then my backs jump to being Alex Collins and Melvin Gordon, where I still have my top 3 receivers who I like. So I am pretty happy with this team. I do think, you just got to fill the draft out and go with whatever's best for whatever you're doing. Yeah, and the only other thing I like to say is I think fantasy should get rid of kickers and defenses, but that's it.
I still enjoy the kicker and defense thing. It just adds a little bit more entertainment value for me. I would like to comment because I do think you're making a really good point, especially because you're going to find teams that wanted to go ahead and do your route, because your route's definitely the more logical route, which I tend to lean towards myself with trying to get as many bench spots available with having that high upside. I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to do that this time around in my mock draft, which is always a good learning lesson for every mock you do. Sometimes people get too hung up on just the initial, all right, my first 5, 6 picks are good, my team is solid. When going throughout the course of the year, you win your fantasy league based off those bench spots that you make. If you make those high-end picks, like the people who were able to somehow get Alvin Kamara last year, those are the ones that are able to that are able to definitely walk away with more titles, more so than others. So I'm definitely on that side. The one thing I will say, you can go quarterback early. It's just that it's one of those things where you have to be prepared in order to do it. I would not suggest taking a quarterback early on just saying, all right, this is the best player available. Oh, I don't like anyone around my spot, I'm going to take a quarterback. Because then, yeah, you end up in the scenario as this team 9 here where you end up with Marlon Mack. But if you could actually plot out and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take a quarterback here and know exactly what other options I can get, then you can manage your team in a much more productive way. Because there's going to be weeks where if you take Aaron Rodgers, he drops 30 or 40 points, that's going to make up for your other players on your team. So it can work. You just have to make sure that you plan for it accordingly and you don't have a weaker roster.
Yep.
But with everything on that said, we may do another follow-up on this, just talking about the other teams and seeing how the ADPs are going to go. But that is going to finish things off for our fun mock draft episode here. Keep in mind, once again, for anyone that's listening to the podcast, you can just go to the YouTube channel to check out the Fantasy Football Shrinks. And you can also go to our website, fantasyfootballshrinks.com, to see all of our latest articles and rankings being updated throughout the course of the preseason. And for everything else, we will see you guys at our next therapy session.